First of all, I'd like to start off this video by saying thank you to everyone that watched my previous YouTube video. I received a lot of positive feedback and questions regarding the video. Due to this reason, I'm creating this video, which is a Q&A on how to pass the selection process for both CAE Oxford and L3 Harris. I'd also like to say thank you to everyone that has sent their questions through Instagram regarding the selection process. I will try and answer everyone's questions to the best of my ability. So the first question I got asked was, what is the structure of the course at CAE Oxford and L3 Harris? Now, the course structure at CAE Oxford is slightly different to the one at L3 Harris. Now, the CAE Oxford course is split into 4 phases and it takes 18 months to complete altogether. Now, the first phase is phase 1. Now, phase 1 is known as your theoretical knowledge training. This is also known as ground school. Now, this is where you have to complete 14 ATPL subjects within about 7 to 8 months. It's mostly classroom and computer-based training and it takes place in Oxford. Then you've got phase 2. Now, phase 2 is your foundation flight training. This takes place actually in Phoenix, Arizona in America. Now, this is where you learn how to fly solo in a single engine piston aircraft. Now, this is mostly aircraft and simulator training. Now, this takes about 5 to 6 months to complete, and at the end of this you have to perform your CPL skills test, which is your commercial pilot's license skills test. Once you have completed this, you then move on to phase 3. This is where you return back to the UK and you're back in Oxford, and this is where you learn to fly using your instrument in a multi-engine piston aircraft. This is mostly aircraft and simulator training, and this takes about 3 to 4 months to complete, and at the end of this you have to perform your MEIR, your multi-engine instrument rating skills test. Then you move on to phase 4. Now, phase 4 is known as your multi-crew corporation. It's MCC, and this is where you learn how to fly as a member of a professional cockpit crew. Now, this approximately takes 1 month to complete, and it's mostly flight simulator training and a bit of classroom training. This also takes place in Oxford, and at the end of this you obtain your MCC. Once you have finished all 4 phases, you then obtain a frozen ATPL. Now, for the L3 Harris course structure, it's slightly different, but it's pretty similar. So you firstly start off with your basic training, which is your ground school. Now, this is where you also complete your 14 ATPL subjects, and you'll complete it within about 29 weeks. You then move on to your foundation flight training. Now, your foundation flight training is also in a single engine piston aircraft, and it takes 21 weeks to complete. Now, this can either happen in the UK, Portugal, or in New Zealand. Then you move over to advanced flight training. This is where you do your multi-engine piston aircraft training. This takes about 25 weeks to complete. You also do your upset prevention and recovery training. This also takes place in the UK, either in Portugal or New Zealand. Then you move on to your intermediate flying. Your intermediate training is where you basically do your multi-crew corporation, and you also do your initial crew resource management course. This also takes about 9 weeks to complete, and this is done in the UK. Once again, once you have completed all this, you then do your type rating. Your type rating will take about 11 weeks to complete, and it depends where you do it, depending on the airlines. Now, the next question I got asked is, where does your training take place? Now, for CAE Oxford, you do your ground school either in Oxford, in Madrid, Brussels or Melbourne, and you get to choose where you want to do your ground school. But for your advanced and foundation flight training, you will have to do that in Phoenix. Now, for L3 Harris, you do your ground school in the UK, most likely either in Southampton or Coventry, but then you do advanced and foundation flight training either in New Zealand, Portugal or Coventry. So another question I got asked was, how many people turn up on the day of the selection process? If I'm quite honest with you, I don't know the specifics on how many people turn up on your day, and it very much varies of how busy CAE Oxford and L3 Harris really are. But on my non-technical assessment day, 5 people had turned up, and on my technical assessment day, 6 people had turned up. I think it's quite important that you get to know everyone's names, maybe in the waiting room, especially for the non-technical assessment day, because you've got the group interview, and in the group interview you'd have to speak to everyone, you'd have to address everyone's names, so it's quite useful that you get to know everyone's names, their backgrounds, where they're from beforehand, and I think this will help you for the group interview. Another question I received was, how did I apply for the integrated ATPL? Now, I applied online and submitted my application online for both CAE Oxford and L3 Harris. If you were to apply for an integrated or either cadet program, you would have to do the same. You visit CAE Oxford's website or L3 Harris's website, apply online and submit your application, and they'll get back to you to see whether or not you passed the screening phase. The next question I got asked was, how much preparation did I take for the exams? Now for the maths test, it's at a GCSE level, and I'd studied A-level maths, so I didn't take that much preparation, as I was quite confident that I would do well. I found it quite easy, but if you're someone who hasn't done maths recently and you haven't touched it in a long time, I believe it's paramount that you actually practice beforehand. You get a lot of preparation done, practice online, do the questions, go to the CAE's website and purchase the official maths bundle or latest pilot jobs, and there's a lot of questions there. Now for the physics test, it was at a GCSE standard, and I actually hadn't touched GCSE physics in about 3 years. Due to this reason, I actually practiced a lot, did a lot of questions. I purchased the CAE physics bundle and I found that really helpful. Some of the questions that I actually did in the physics bundle actually came up on the day of the assessment, so that was quite good. So you can definitely purchase the CAE physics bundle. I would highly recommend that. Now for the aptitude test, I actually took a lot of preparation. I actually purchased the joystick and I purchased the 2 softwares. And this had really helped me because I wanted to familiarise myself with some of the aptitude tests that may potentially come up, and they did come up, and it really helped me. I felt quite confident while doing the assessment. I didn't feel scared or anything. You just want to make sure that you've had enough practice beforehand. So due to this reason, I think it's quite important that you practice beforehand. Maybe purchase a joystick, purchase the aptitude tests online, and just try it and see how it goes. Now for the interview, I actually took a lot of preparation. I thought that interview was going to be the hardest part of the assessment, and I thought it actually was. And due to this reason, I took a lot of preparation. I practiced at home. I went through my answers for some of the questions that may potentially come up, and some of them did come up. I found that latest pilot jobs had a really good question bank, and most of the questions that were there actually came up on the day of the interview, so that was quite good. So I recommend that go to latest pilot jobs, get the CAE Oxford and L3 bundle, and then there's a question bank where it has a lot of questions and you can practice from there. Now overall, I did take a lot of preparation and I did practice a lot at home, and it did pay off. I think that practice is key. The more you practice, the more you will perfect all your assessments. I think it's important that you practice everything and not just specific components where you feel that you're weak, because you don't know what will come up on the day of your assessment. You don't want to be disappointed in the next couple of days when you find out your results that you didn't pass one of the components. So practice all the assessments and you will pass. Another question I got asked is, what is the best thing to do to prepare for the selection process? Now my best advice would be to purchase the SkyTest software and purchase the latest pilot jobs website bundle for CA Oxford and L3 Harris and practice from there. Familiarise yourself with some of the aptitudes that may come up. Do a lot of questions for the maths and physics test. Go through the interview questions that may potentially come up and make answers. If you think that you can actually pass and ace the selection process without taking any practice beforehand and not familiarising yourself with some of the aptitude tests, I'm telling you right now, you won't be able to pass. You need to familiarise yourself with some of the things that may come up, because it'll make you feel more confident. You'll know what's going to come up, and when you're going to do the assessment, you'll just feel at ease, really. Another question I got asked was, do you need a Class 1 medical certificate before applying? And the answer to that question is no, you don't need one. And honestly, there's no bonus for having a Class 1 medical test beforehand. But I think it's quite important that you actually get your Class 1 medical test before applying for the selection process, because there's no point paying for the selection process and then passing the phase and then finding out that you can't actually even attain a Class 1 medical test because you're not medically fit, and that your dreams and aspiration to become a pilot won't come true. So due to this reason, I think it's quite important that you actually get your Class 1 medical test done first to see whether you'll pass or not. Another question I got asked was, how old do you have to be to apply for the selection process for either integrated ATP or a selection process? So you have to be 17 years old to actually apply for either integrated ATP or a cadet program, but you have to be 18 years old to actually start your training. Another question I got asked was, how important is eyesight for the selection process and in order to become a pilot? So for the selection process, you'll have all your technical assessments on the computer, so make sure you don't forget your glasses, as you'll definitely need them, and you'll be doing things such as reaction speed, so you definitely want to have your glasses with you on the day. And in order to become a pilot, you actually don't need 20/20 vision to actually become a pilot. You can still wear glasses and fly a plane. On your Class 1 medical, however, it will just say a limitation that you need to wear spectacles while flying. That's really it. The next question I got asked was, what software website did I find most useful that helped me pass the selection process? And for me, I found latest pilot jobs, CAE Oxford and L3 Harris bundle quite useful. I think it was the best website / software out there that helped me pass the selection process for a various number of reasons. For the interview, it had a large question bank, and some of the questions that actually came up in my real interview were there in the question bank from the latestpilotjobs.com website. Also, all the aptitude test assessments were there. The maths and physics questions were really useful. It helped me prepare in advance, so that was quite good as well. And also, it's the cheapest one out of all the softwares and websites that I've linked down below. So due to this reason, I think Latest Pilot Jobs website was the best one to use. Help me prepare for the selection process. Now, the next question I got asked was, how long is the interview? Now, the interview varies in time. It can be from about 30 minutes to 1 hour, and this really depends on your answer and how long your answer is. Now, you don't want to give an answer that's too much in detail, but you don't want an answer where you're lacking detail. So make sure you have the correct balance, the correct structure in your answers, and it will vary in time really, and I can't give you a specific time of how long it would take. But my interview actually took about 40 to 45 minutes, so I was just in the middle of 30-minute to 1 hour mark. So the next question I got asked was, what is the best tip I've got for the interview? Now, for me, I think the best tip I could give you guys for the interview would be, make sure that you're free-flowing, you sound natural, that you've prepared beforehand, and that you're confident while talking. You don't want to sound robotic and memorize and rehearse, because they'll understand that you've memorized your answers in advance. Due to this reason, just create bullet points for your answers. Don't create paragraphs. Just go through the potential questions that may potentially come up and create some answers. Maybe get one of your family members to test you to see how you sound for the interview. Ask them for their feedback. See if you're talking too fast or too slow. Yeah, that's really the best tip I've got for the interview. Another question I got asked is, what career prospects are there after flying school? Now, if you're doing a cadet program, once you finish flying school, you'll join your airline straight away. But if you're doing the integrated ATPL, once you finish flying school, you'll be placed in a placement pool. Now, this is where airlines come and take pilots when they have a shortage of pilots. And now, because CAE Oxford and L3 Harris are such big flying school and they're such reputable flying schools in the world, they've got a 96% record that once a pilot's finished, they get into an airlines within 6 months. Now, this is a very good reason why you should join big flying schools such as CAE Oxford and L3 Harris. Now, this next question I got asked a couple of times, and is, what is the difference between an integrated ATPO and a cadet program? Now, a cadet program is a program where you are basically tied down to an airlines from the first day of joining flying school. So there's the British Airways cadet program or the EasyJet cadet program, and since your first day of training, you know that once you complete your training, you will actually join British Airways or EasyJet straight away. Now, there's positives to this, that because you've got a job security straight away, that you know that once you leave, you've got that job guaranteed. But the negative would be that you're tied down with them for a specific amount of time, that you might be contracted, that once you've completed 1,500 hours on A320, after that you can leave. Now, the integrated ATPL, you're not tied down with anyone, you just complete flying school how it is normally, and then you have to apply for a job. Now, the benefit is you can apply to whichever airlines you want after you've completed flying school. However, there's no job security that, yes, you will get British Airways, or no, you won't get this airlines. So there's pros and cons to both programs. It's whichever one you think will be better for you. Another question I got asked was, do you need a degree before applying? And the answer to the question is no, you don't need a degree before applying. Once you have finished your A-levels, you can apply straight away online. But if you were to have a degree, it doesn't really benefit you in flying school. But maybe once you've completed flying school and you're applying for a job and there were two pilots, one who had a degree and one who didn't have a degree, the airline may choose the person that has the degree as to have an extra qualification, but they may also choose the pilot or cadet that has the higher ATPL score. And if the person who doesn't have a degree has a higher ATPL score compared to the one who has a degree, the airline may choose the one who doesn't have a degree. So the next question I got asked is, can you get a student loan or a scholarship? And the answer to that question is, no, you can't get a student loan because you're not going through university. And if you are a female, you can actually get a scholarship because there aren't many female pilots in the aviation industry, and CAE are trying to encourage more female pilots to join. Due to this reason, both CAE Oxford and L3 Harris actually have a scholarship for female pilots. So if you are a female and you want to become a pilot, you can look up the scholarship programs for both CAE Oxford and L3 Harris on their websites. So another question I got asked was, if I was to be successful in the selection process, after how long can you start training? Now, this much varies on how busy CAE Oxford and L3 Harris really are, if they have a long queue list of cadets joining them. But hopefully, I guess, within 3 to 4 months you should join. This very much depends on how busy they are. If you want to find out, feel free, contact CA Oxford and L3 Harris, and they should be able to give you a date. So another question I got asked was, is there any verbal reasoning tests at either CA Oxford or L3 Harris? And from what I know, I don't think they do any more verbal reasoning tests, but I do know that last year British Airways Cadet Programme actually had a verbal reasoning test. If you want to find out more, once again, just phone up CA Oxford or L3 Harris to find out if they still do it, but from what I know, I don't think they do anymore. Now, I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I've answered all your questions, and thank you once again for sending your questions through. If you have any other questions, please leave them down below and I will try and answer them. Thank you once again for watching my video. I hope you guys enjoyed it, and yeah, until next time.